Namaskar. Welcome to another episode of India Foundation Facebook interview series, our joint initiative to identify and celebrate women achievers in the realm of cybersecurity. Today, we have with us Ms. Mansi Shah, Principal Cybersecurity at Fidelity Investments. Mansi is an experienced cybersecurity professional with over a decade of experience of working as a core penetration tester and vulnerability manager, serving to clients from across industries. Thank you for speaking to us, Mansi.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
I must say that I'm very fascinated with your designation of a pen tester. For the benefit of our audience, would you explain what does a pen tester do?
Absolutely. So I think I would like to start with I love being a pen tester. I love being called a pen tester. And if given a choice, I want to do this all my life. I know that this is a conscious effort that I have been doing at least couple of years over the last few couple of years, because everyone expects you to take up managerial roles and lead teams and grow up that ladder. But for me personally, I love being an individual contributor, being a pen tester. And to talk more about what a pen tester does is, in layman terms, I would say ethical hacking. So when I say ethical, is we hack systems or computers or networks, and we hack it ethically, that's with permission, with prior permission, so that hackers do not reach the systems that we are looking at. So the idea of ethical hacking is you get into the system, check the vulnerability, check for the loopholes that the system has before an attacker can do it. So in a day-to-day life, what we would do is we would look. So we generally work for websites and our own infrastructure, across the organization, and we try to find loopholes in the entire infrastructure and web application, mobile applications, a series of infrastructure elements that we look at, and we try to look for loopholes and close those loopholes before any outsider attacks the system.
So how is a pen tester's work different from that of an ethical hacker? I mean, where do the differences lie?
It is the same. So when you say ethical hacker, it can be used as a pen tester as well. The name can be used as same. When you say hacker, hacker is someone who tries to use those vulnerabilities or attack systems for their own benefit. They have multiple benefits, right? Like you would have heard of ransomware attacks where they do it for money. Then there are political reasons they do it for. There are various reasons why hackers try to attack systems, and what we do is ethically hacking. So when you say ethically, it is just we take prior permission from the person who are working for. So in my case, I work for my own organization. So we take permission from them. It's all documented, and then we do the hacking.
As a practitioner who's at the front end of technological developments, how do you assess the changes in our digital lives over the last 21 months due to the unprecedented pandemic? And how many of these features do you think will leave a permanent imprint in the society, and how many of these would just fade away with time?
Okay, so I definitely think that it has had a huge impact. The pandemic has had a huge impact on our digital lives, because simple things like internet banking has grown among even senior citizens who would not use it earlier. I have seen my own parents walk to bank for every transaction. So they have started using internet banking. So definitely a huge rise in the digital transactions. And in terms of things that would leave a permanent mark, I think these are going to stay. I don't know when the pandemic is going to end, for that matter, but it is going to stay for long, and I don't see anything wrong in that, except that people definitely have to be more careful while they're doing their transaction. It's not as simple as just walking into a bank and doing a transaction. When you do an online transaction, there are a lot of elements that you need to take care of, like your credentials that you use for online transaction. You don't write it anywhere on the table, or leave it anywhere in the house. There are many ways of handling these credentials. So there are definitely, maybe that's a little too much for our senior citizens to expect that they have these password lockers and all. I think it's okay, but easiest thing is you remember the password and don't write it down on places which are easily accessible. Then there are OTPs that you get, right? You receive on your mobile. You don't share it with anyone, irrespective of whoever that anyone is. So these kind of simple tasks, definitely they will have to do while they're doing these online transactions. But I think it also adds a great amount of convenience, because you don't have to travel or you don't have to be physically present. In terms of schools as well, children have been doing their online classes, and I think it's pretty much convenient. Of course, they miss a lot on the school activities and all, but thinking about the pandemic and thinking about what's going to happen, like I think thinking back when the pandemic started, I could not even imagine how things would work. Even for me, simply put, I could not imagine doing meetings staying at home. So each time I would be logging in from home, I would be worried about, oh God, I have this meeting, I don't know how I'm going to take it from home, which is not a concern anymore. So definitely, I think, at least for me personally, I see a lot of positive impact on my work, and I would want to carry this forward. Like, even after the pandemic, everything is settled down. I think it's a good balance where you have your work and your family time or personal time. So absolutely want to carry this forward.
Very true. And how do you see this altering the social equations? Like, what permanent or temporary imprints will it leave on an average individual's social life or an organization's existence?
So I definitely, at least personally, I feel it's something that is, I would call it a disadvantage, because you lose your personal connect. There is a lot of times when you just choose to, even for social, if you're talking about social media, you just choose to text on social media, or you use your phone instead of meeting, which did not happen previously, right? Like now, people also hesitate. Of course, this is post-pandemic. People also hesitate to meet each other because you don't know what's going to happen when. So you would prefer using digital media for that. So like it's a mix of both. Like maybe you can look at it as an advantage and a disadvantage. But why I would say disadvantage is because you definitely lose that physical contact, or you lose that personal touch when you're digitalizing. But yeah, it does add convenience, and yeah, I think everyone who's working from home would agree with that there is a lot of convenience in terms of getting up late, joining calls directly. So yeah, it has its own goods and bads.
Allow me to take a step back from here and understand from you, how has this changed the nature of your work from when you started your career? What are the kind of cases that you come across now, and how is that different from the cases that you've dealt with in the past?
Okay, so again, I would say a huge amount of progress from what I had seen a decade ago and what I see now, even in terms of client queries. So at that time, I would see a lot of queries on simple questions, like just for example, if I want to talk about one particular vulnerability, which was largely seen in those days. Probably I would mention about that. I won't go too technical, but so there is something called SQL injection. So whereas in that kind of vulnerability, you basically attack the databases that store your data. So each time you log in to any application, if you're using any internet banking, you log in and there is a database which stores your credentials, where it is checked if you're a valid user, and then you log into the website, right? So these databases were attacked using a technique called SQL injection. Now this was very common back then because it was very easy to easy for the attackers to get into the databases. What has happened over the years is definitely you see a lot of cases of SQL injection even now, but I think developers who are coding have understood that cycle, and they know now where they need to place their bug fixes to avoid this kind of vulnerability. So having said that, this is just one of the few examples that have changed, but many of these vulnerabilities which were seen back then are not seen now because again, going it back to awareness. So I remember we used to do a lot of awareness sessions or secure coding practices sessions with developers and people who are coding. So it would be easier for them to understand from the security point of view that what needs to be done right in their code, so that they don't introduce these kind of vulnerabilities at the code level. So these kind of sessions, again, I would bring it back to awareness. So we as a penetration tester and as an organization, we do a lot of these sessions where we show them how these little changes in their code would impact security. So if there's a little scripting error or not an error, I would say, but if there is a loophole in the script that a developer writes to design a web application, that leads to a loophole which introduces a security vulnerability. So if they are aware of this, like if I'm going to write this, it's going to create this this vulnerability, I would not do that. I would do it the better way. So this kind of sessions that we held for developers was helpful, and over the years we have seen that developers have, the basic security vulnerabilities have almost been eliminated because of the awareness that is created within this group of developers. So yeah, I mean, coming back to that, like when you say when I started and when what I am right now, the queries from clients and developers have changed, because it's like simply put, it's from grade 1 to grade 10. You would not, at grade 1 you would probably ask how do I solve this equation, but at grade 10 you already know it and you'll probably have more advanced queries. So that's how I would simply put it.
I'll pick up my next question from there. With the increasing penetration of internet and the evolving role of cyber crimes in the country, the scope of cyber security is not just restricted to tech companies anymore, but it has taken within its ambits even companies of the old economy. We come across cases of data breaches more often than ever now. As someone who has catered to clients from, say, oil to banking, how, in your opinion, what are the big structural challenges that these companies face in keeping up with the cyber security trends?
Okay, so I think I would start with basics like, infrastructure challenges, what we see around the country. So we have digitalized, but then there is still dependency on digital devices, right, which is not very easily available to everyone. There is one class of people who have it very easily available, and then I would say 90% of them don't even know. So in fact, I'd like to share something with you while we're talking about this. So I was interacting with students from Bihar. I think they were 5th graders. And this was very recent, where I showed them Google Maps. I was screen sharing and showing them Google Maps, and everyone was awestruck. They did not know what is Google Maps. So when you compare them to a 5th grader here in Bangalore, like a 5th grader would drive me crazy in Bangalore. But when you look at that sector, they had no idea of what Google Maps is. So, that I think that is the biggest challenge that I see in our country, where resources are not available. Infrastructure challenges that a school, they also were going to a school, but they would, so we did an online meeting through Google Meet, and they would do that using a phone. Like a class of 20, they would meet me using a phone, where I had a laptop and I had a desktop, I had screen, I had everything else. Whereas I think they needed it more than me, because they had this class. So I think that's the first challenge. The next one would be awareness. Like I said, if you're in technology, there's no lack of awareness. You have, I would probably say you have more than the information that you need. But then the senior citizens, they probably do not have that much awareness, because it's not given as a mandate from the government or whatever. And having said that, I think it's really wrong to also blame the government or the authorities for awareness. I think each one of us who are in technology, who are exposed to technology, should do our bit. So I would say, anyone who is in technology, spending all their time with techies and being techies themselves, I think the first responsibility would be to help your surroundings, help your family members, help your surroundings, and help whoever you can to help them with basic technology and basic, probably just tell them about, how you could do a bank transaction safely, how you should not share your OTPs, a lot of things that I'm sure, I have seen a lot of awareness programs carried out by government and different political areas, but I think what would make a difference is each one of us contributing our bit to help at least our surrounding. Like that's the least that we can do.
Very true. In fact, efforts should not just be focused on increasing literacy, but digital literacy, as they say it now. Absolutely. That brings me to my next question, which is more individual-centric. So we've noticed that cyber crimes targeted towards individuals have become a lot more sophisticated. So in the earlier days, you would have scams who were restricted to people claiming to be from the royalty to fish out fortunes from people. But now this has become more personalized. What advice would you give to our viewers in safeguarding themselves from the kind of cyber frauds that you see individuals falling prey to?
Okay, so I think I would continue with the previous question that you asked me, that as an individual who is into IT or any tech field, first advice is, I would say, spread the word, spread awareness within your circle of people. So at least your circle of people know. Now, next is for the people who are, I think like everyone now is using digital devices in some form or the other. So for them, make sure you have simple things in place, like, you know that when you receive an OTP, and if you have not done the transaction, report it to the bank. Do not share OTPs. And when you're setting passwords, do not share passwords with your friends, colleagues or whatever. Let it be personal, I think this is a common trend seen in India that, if you tell someone, no, I cannot tell you, you won't tell me your password, I'm not your friend. Like, these kind of things. It might happen in all ages. I have seen it in kids nowadays, but, where they would be like, I'm your friend, can't you tell me your password? And things like that. So it starts as a silly game with kids, but then it continues. I have seen organizations where passwords are written on sticky notes and shared. So it's just convenience. Like, people look at convenience more than, securing your data. But of course, we want convenience, but not at the cost of losing your data. So I think that's the only advice. Be more mindful of things when you're doing these digital transactions, because what happens is hackers, why do you think hackers are increasing in their attacks? Because it's easy. It's easy for them. They have easy attack vectors. They have easy vulnerable people who are doing silly things day in and out. So that just gives them more, I would say it's more motivating to them, for them to just, it's like, yeah, okay, this is something that I can do it very easily. So if you make that a little difficult as a common man, if you try to do your bit, like just simple things, don't share passwords, don't share OTPs, do not use common passwords across websites. That's another thing I would, share with everyone who's watching this, because what you do is you tend to use common passwords because you don't want to remember passwords. But what happens is, if there is a data breach in one of the sites that you're using, those passwords are leaked, that's the easiest target for an attacker, because he would use that same password, because that's a common trend that we see, right? Like, I have seen many people do that. Like, even in families, I've seen that they have the same password for, I have seen families using the same password. ATM card pins, they have the same pins because everyone in the family should know the pin. So these kind of things, if you're more mindful about them while you're using digital assets, I think it's more than enough to stop the daily breaches.
Very true, very true. And in fact, not very, not too much in the past, but there have been cases of child crime through virtual gaming. Blue Whale?
Yes.
Blue Whale was...
Many of them, right? Like, I remember there was a series of these kind of games. I think that's the thing again, right? Like, there is no awareness. I do agree. It's an age where you tend to get fascinated by a lot of things, and it's a vulnerable age, right? Like I said, even if you look at senior citizens or kids of that age, teenagers especially, it is a vulnerable age. But again, if you just have so if I would say as a parent, I would teach my children that, these are the things you are not supposed to do. These are the things that you have to do. You have to check before talking to anyone online. So those things, I think just awareness that you spread within your circle would help children also, I know that they are at that age where everything seems fascinating, but a little bit from your side, if you can do to spread awareness, I think that would help in reducing these child crimes as well.
So I'm going to make the most of your presence here and ask you to illuminate on the concept and the rise of dark web for the benefit of our viewers. Would you please explain what exactly is dark web?
Absolutely. Okay, so I would I think put in the most simple terms, dark web is something that's on the internet but you cannot see it. So there is web that we see generally, that we use for browsing our social media or whatever we see online, and there is deep web. Now deep web is the middle layer between web and dark web. Now deep web is these sites where you have these login forms, which is something that is personal to you, like for example your internet banking login the login page that you see on internet banking. Those are deep webs, which is not not the login form. I would say the home the home screen that you see. Those are something which is available only to you when you enter your credentials. That's the screens that is available to you. So those are a part of deep web. And dark web is something that you access using specialized software. So one of the example for these software is there's a tool called Tor, which is the onion router. So what happens with this is, suppose I am accessing a website or any server. My IP address is generally seen at the server log. If you look at the server logs, my IP address is generally seen. So IP address is basically, I would say, a unique address that your system has, your laptop or desktop or device has, which when checked at the server side, with the IP address, we can get a lot of details of where this request is coming on from. Now what happens with Tor is it masks the IP address. So there are multiple layers of masking done. So at the server end, so the website that you're hitting, at the server end there are no logs of where this request is coming from. Why this is created? Dark web is it is definitely for people who want to maintain their anonymity, right? You don't know where these requests coming from. So dark web, I think people generally get scared of dark web, when you mention the term, or if you're aware of that, you're like, okay, this is dangerous. It's not dangerous. It's just something that is hidden and it's meant to be that way. And there are softwares, there are tools which you use to access that dark web. And yes, I mean, just to give you a simple example and comparison, you look at TV and you say, yeah, this is not good or this is good, but each of it has its pros and cons, right? So definitely TV or internet or anything gives you a lot of information, but it also comes with a lot of security issues that we've been seeing lately. Off late, it's increasing a lot. But same thing with dark web, that there are a lot of attackers that are using dark web to build sites which are used just to gather credentials. For example, we use our login credentials, login and password for banks to log into bank sites. So these so just to give you a very simple example of what can be done using dark web is, you create a login page of a banking site which looks exactly the same as your banking site, and you send it across to, I'm sure most of you would have seen these phishing kind of emails where you receive an email saying you have won a lottery of $20,000, click here to claim it, and when you click on that, that redirects to one of the dark websites. Now once you redirect to that, it opens up a page of internet banking which looks very similar, or I would say exactly the same as your internet banking, legitimate internet banking page. and you enter your credentials, right? Because you're not very mindful or thoughtful about, you know, what is there on the page. You just look at the logo probably, and then you say, okay, this is good enough for me to go ahead. There might be something in the URL, you know, the address of the page, where you might see some spelling mistake or something like that. So again, I think I might sound very philosophical, but I think mindfulness is something that would help here, because when you're mindful about what you're doing, you would know where there is a mistake. So when you compare that fake site to your internet banking site, you would see some differences, and then when you're aware that it is different, you don't give in your credentials. Once you give in those credentials, they have it all. That's all. So that's
as soon as you log into that dummy page of the replica of your actual site, they have your information.
They have your information, right? They have, because that website is controlled by them. So they have logs where they can capture everything that you have entered. Once they have it, it's as easy as, you know, just logging into your internet banking page, change the password, and they have the control. So that's the only thing. Like dark web is also definitely used for these kind of attacks. But yeah. Having said that, again, we go back to our pros and cons. Each thing has its pros and cons. It's just about how you are aware and how much you are mindful about using anything online. Especially now when we see there is a rise in cybercrimes, then definitely it makes sense for you to be more careful while you're using these sites.
So you use the example of internet banking and financing softwares to explain the rise of dark web. Continuing that trend, where do you stand on this debate on regulation of cryptocurrencies in India? I mean, what in your opinion should be the way forward on creating a legal framework around the use of cryptocurrencies, and what are some of the security features that people can fall prey to and may not be aware of when dealing with cryptocurrencies?
Okay, so I think I would definitely be in favor of regulating cryptocurrencies. I think it just adds more, sort of standard framework to these transactions, which is not there as of now. And if I would compare it, it would be something like the stock exchange that we see, right? We have agents and we have dealers who we reach out to when we want to buy or sell stocks, and I would see the same thing with cryptocurrencies also. If you want to make any transaction, you reach out to a trusted agent, a third part, not any random. So what is happening right now is there is direct dealing. There's no third party involved. What I would be in favor of is regulation, and that would also mean that we have a trusted agent or third party who we could reach out to in terms of transactions. Now, in terms of securing these transactions, I think it would be very much similar to what we are doing now with stock exchange or internet banking. So, at the organization side, definitely a series of security assessments, that entire security life cycle that applications go through before they are launched to public. And at the user side, again, I think just the simple steps to be more, do not share your passwords, and same rules apply here as well, because again here what you're doing is, at least that is what I would visualize regulation as, is you have a website that you log into, and basically how stock exchange works now, right? Like you have third parties who take care of everything, that every transaction that you're working on. So you log into a website with your credentials, and then you perform your transactions, and every transaction goes through a third party, and once you're doing the transaction, you don't have to worry about anything else, because everything is taken care of. Now, what are the basic steps that a user does is log in and then perform transactions. So simple things like your passwords, be more careful of what passwords you're using, and then if there are transaction passwords, be sure that you're using the right complexity of the password. So that's one more thing I wanted to touch base on. We do tend to use passwords which are very simple to remember, but every time you use a password that is simple to remember that it's simple to crack as well. So there are millions of tools available which do this cracking. Like what an attacker would do is run this tool for about 10 hours, and he gets all the passwords that are easily crackable. So it's not at all a difficult task for an attacker. It's like, you just click on a button to start the tool. It runs for 10 hours. You have nothing to do. You can do everything else in the world in those 10 hours. Come back and check the results, and you have a list of passwords. So the simpler it is to remember, simpler it is to break. So I think that is one thing that I would suggest to all the users. And I think similar rules like what we're following, it just needs more regulation, and I think it is going to come up very soon. And once that regulation is done, then on the cybersecurity front, I think it is the same set of rules that we are already following. So nothing very different on that scale.
I'll move to a completely different part of cybersecurity now. So we're going through a phase of what is being termed as the fourth industrial revolution. Emerging technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data, deep learning algorithms, they're rising simultaneously. How do you think will the cybersecurity landscape change in the future? What are some of the threats and challenges that will come up as we move forward in a world that's heavily dominated by technology now?
Okay, great. So I think from the time I started my career till now, it's been an amazing journey in terms of the technology that we've seen from, I would say, a decade ago until now. Because to give you a very simple example, we had tools which would do a very basic kind of scan through the vulnerability, through the application or infrastructure that we're doing. But the kind of tools that we have available now are highly intelligent. So with all these AI and ML coming up, tools are also getting very intelligent. And what I would say is definitely that is going to be a challenge for cybersecurity domain, because you have to keep up with the attacker. So I think I mentioned in the morning, I love hackers because they give us a lot of work, they give us a lot of thinking to do. So with each tool, so say today we've created this tool, we've written this script to see how this vulnerability can be caught. They're already up with another vulnerability. So now the next thing is we look at how do we create a tool which would catch this vulnerability. So in fact, I think the recent one, we have seen a very huge rise in log4j vulnerabilities which has hit recently, and unfortunately it's the time of the year when everyone is celebrating, and then half of the people in cybersecurity are trying to debug this. But like I said, there is a continuous flow, like even with a blink of an eye there's another attack that you cannot even think about. So it is definitely going to be a challenge, especially in terms of the tools that we use, because when you leave it to manual, so penetration testing is a combination of both automated and manual assessment, right? So the manual assessment is easy, I would say, because there is a human brain working behind it. But the automated part is where I see the challenge, because to teach a machine what you're doing is going to take some time. Of course, it has, like I said, it has tremendous progress from what I had seen and now what I see. But yeah, I think that would be a major challenge. And in terms of talking about the advantages, I think it's going to be amazing, because in terms of convenience and how fast things are going to move with cryptocurrencies or blockchain or all the new technologies that are coming up, it's going to be definitely a big advantage to everyone using it.
You come across as a person who advocates for greater digital awareness and digital literacy to befriend technology. Now, as we move towards the end of our conversation, I want to broadly ask you, what role do you see the governments and civil society playing in securing the digital life of a common man, of an average individual citizen?
Okay. Great question. I think I love it, and I think we did touch base slightly on this. So definitely the highest help that a government organization or any organization for that matter could do is spreading awareness. spread awareness in your own way, you know. Each person, and like I said, like we spoke about this before, that I would not leave it to the government or any authority to do this. I would do it myself. So for everyone, including yourself, your organization or the government on the whole, only thing is spread awareness to everyone equally. So like I said, it should not be, you know, like one part of India has no idea of what's going on and the other part is so ahead that they have excess of information. So I think that's something that government can really help in, is spreading awareness uniformly across India, whether you are from a village or from a metro. I think everyone deserves to be aware of what's going on in the digital market, and definitely everyone deserves to know how to protect their own resources.
Thank you, thank you. I'll just end with the last question, that you're a leading woman thought leader in a space that's been largely dominated by men. What advice would you leave our viewers with who want to follow in your footsteps?
Okay, so firstly, I don't think it's, or maybe it is largely dominated by men, but I wouldn't want to think that way. It's just a choice that you make at the beginning of your career. And for everyone who wants to, I think being a male or a female absolutely has nothing to do with this domain. It's an amazing domain. You would love every minute spent here, every moment spent here. Honestly, in this last decade, I don't think I've had a dull moment, a single dull moment at work. It's been amazing. It's been fascinating. And yes, there are times where you feel like, I think especially Indian women generally go through this phase where, you know, you settle with your family and things change definitely in your personal life. But I think the only suggestion I would say is go ahead irrespective of any changes in your personal life, because your commitment to this domain would lead you to, I don't even know where, like it's I can't even describe how high you may be able to go with this. So yeah, just go ahead without even worrying about anything.
That's a very positive note to end this conversation on. Thank you so much for doing this, Mansi. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was amazing and I enjoyed every bit of this. Thank you.